Hello, I'm Elizabeth Daly, Dean of the School of Cinematic Arts here at the University of Southern California. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to join us for a remarkable event. I'm at the moment sitting in the projection booth above Frank Sinatra Hall in the Eileen Norris Theater Complex, where, along with hundreds of our students, I have just had the pleasure of seeing once again Forrest Gump. Tonight, we are going to have a unique opportunity to discuss with the very collaborators who created this film how it came into being. Tom Hanks, Gary Sinise, and the screenwriter, Eric Roth, will join Robert Zemeckis, the director, in sharing their memories of the creation of Forrest Gump with all of us. It's always very special for us here at USC to have Bob Zemeckis back on campus. Not only is he one of our most famous alumni, but he also teaches here on a rather regular basis, introducing students to the newest techniques for making motion pictures. Bob Zemeckis was here at USC during the 1970s, along with people like John Carpenter, Robert Elswit, the great cinematographer, Ben Burt, the sound designer, and just as other generations before them, they all worked together to create their student films that would eventually lead them into their careers. Bob's student film, The Lift, is still shown today to incoming students as the perfect example of a short film. One of the things Bob has said many times is that when he first came here, they put an 8mm camera in his hand, and from then on, he thought filmically. About 6 years ago, he helped us to create the Robert Zemeckis Center for Digital Arts, a wonderful facility where students can explore the very latest techniques that Bob has helped to pioneer in the creation of motion pictures. So I think we're all in for an exciting evening. I'll be moderating the panel, and I hope you are looking forward to what these folks have to say as much as I am. Welcome our guest, please.
What do you want us to say?
Future Bob Zemeckis is out there.
Okay, so let's get started so that we have lots of time for questions. The first thing I thought we might talk about is what it means to adapt a novel like this. So, Eric, I guess that's kind of a question for you and Bob about, finding it, the process of adapting it, how much you worked with the author of the novel.
Actually, some other screenwriters had taken a crack at it and had not failed, but had not succeeded in the sense that, and so Warner Brothers was willing to, they put in a turnaround actually to Paramount, whereas Tom and I went together and we had met on a wonderful movie called The Postman that you may remember.
Written by Eric Roth.
Yeah, which had won me a Razzie at one point. In any case, Tom and I went in to sell it to, rest his soul, Brandon Tartikoff, who was the head of Paramount at the time. And Tom, if you remember, actually acted out a bunch of stuff that we talked about. Because I remember saying he was sitting on a bench, there's a feather, and Tom played various sort of parts of it in character.
Wendy Feineman was there.
And Wendy Feineman, I'm leaving out, you're right, the producer who had the novel at that point. And we then went searching for a director when Paramount agreed to do it. And we were lucky enough to land in Bob Zemeckis' lap, or blessed, I guess you'd say.
I understand that there's some newly admitted graduate students that are here tonight. So I just want to say welcome. Welcome. If you're serious about movie making, you're in the right place. I never read the novel, ever, to this day. That's the truth. It was Eric's screenplay that was my inspiration, and from what I gathered, bits and pieces, I think, you know, the glue, the thing that Eric saw in this novel was the love story between Forrest and Jenny, and he sort of saw that and was able to pull that out and make that the spine for this movie.
If I could just interject for 1 second, just to say how Bob, the script, I think I write too much probably in most of the movies I write. And Bob really, as a writer himself, I mean, felt certain things were just excesses and had the, you know, sort of the overview of it. And just to let you know, just as sort of a little thing was, Lieutenant Dan had over his head in the first draft a black cloud, which then went away. And Jenny had angel wings. Now, they may have been the worst ideas ever, but Bob felt this is a bit much.
And Forrest always had Curious George as a cartoon monkey talking to him. Exactly. And I always think, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I always had the feeling that because I did Roger Rabbit, that's how come they sent me the script, because they said, get the guy who can do the cartoons and the humans together. And the first thing I said was, I'll do this, but all this cartoon stuff has to go.
And you know, the other part was that after Bob had read it and said he was interested in doing it, he said, now we got to go to work, which is what we did, you know, and which happens with any good director. And you start from page one, and some months, or it could be a year later, you might get lucky and get a movie.
Yeah.
So, Tom, I have to ask you, and Bob too, I mean, bringing Forrest to life, you know, were there specific things that you did? Did you rehearse? Did you improvise? Were there techniques that you're willing to share, or perhaps not share?
Well, I think the biggest thing, by the way, we just came from dinner where we laughed our heads off. So it's odd for us to come here and feel like we're IBM executives giving a seminar on new RAM DOS technologies. But nonetheless, we were flying by the seat of our pants. I certainly felt as though we were. There were some wardrobe tests and the usual things. We did screen tests with Robin, who was pregnant at the time. We did the screen tests. So we were shooting her from above, and I had no real character, and I was always afraid that Bob was going to look at the screen tests for Jenny and for a young Forrest and then fire me because obviously I had no idea what I'm doing. But when we talked about Forrest's voice, his accent, his cadence, and we could have slapped something together. I mean, as an actor, I was prepared to say, "What do you want, Bob?" But we ended up casting Michael Humphreys, who, by the way, is now serving in Iraq. He is now in the military, serving in Iraq. He was, how old was he, Bob? 8, 9?
Something like that.
He was
7 or 8.
He was a little kid, and Bob was, how are we going to do this? And I don't know who it was. One of us said, well, we have this kid. Rather than make him, I think that was what we got together and said, you got to talk to this kid, Tom. Make sure that he does what you want him to do. And I realized that was going to be impossible. I said, well, rather than do that, why don't I do what he does? So you get a natural kid being himself. And Michael talked the way, when he was 8 or 9, he talked the way Forrest talks as an adult.
And he was really godsend, too, because I remember you always saying, I just don't want to, do a Southern accent. I just don't want to just do that.
I did that on other films. But.
And you're right, yeah. Right. But I mean, no, I remember you saying that. But when he came along, it was like, okay, now we have something to work with.
I had a tape recorder, and we took Michael around. Actually, we took young Michael Humphreys out to the Gump house in South Carolina for the first time, and I was talking to him. I said, so what does your dad do, Michael? He said, well, my daddy makes grease. I said, what do you mean he makes grease? Well, he works in a factory and makes grease. I said, well, what do you have to use grease for? Oh, there's all kinds of uses for grease. It goes in, they use it in oils, and they use it in lubricants, and they put it in lipsticks. So it's like...
Well, think about how
done.
powerful. Think about how powerful. I wish I could get hypnotized and get any memory of making a movie erased so I can see the movie. But it's got to be really powerful to have seen Tom doing Forrest with that accent, in the first couple minutes of the movie, and then there's little Forrest on the bus, and he opens his mouth and speaks exactly the same way. I mean, I think, subconsciously there's like a thing that just clicks there, and it all just works and makes that whole thing work.
That was the, then after that, it was just one damn thing after the other, It was just like trying to...
Well, you look at the film and you say, okay, anyone looking at the film from a critical point of view says it's comedy, it's absurdity, it's tragedy, it's satire, it's horror, it's fable. I mean, and it all came together.
It's a Bob Zemeckis film.
Right. So, I think what probably intrigues a lot of audiences is, do you know when you're making it this is what's going to happen? Do you know how it's going to come together? Is it post? When do you realize that you have this incredible balance?
I never do. I mean, all I can do is just try to get through the day. I ask the crew that all the time, too. I ask my crew, I say, now, do you guys know when you're making these movies if they're going to be good or if they're not going to be good? And they go, no, we never do. Never do.
Well, there were huge questions is really what was going to happen in the movie 2 weeks before we started shooting. Bob's process here is to get everybody in a room. It's like boiler room sales or something like that. It's like hothouse plants. You sit in this room with bad food in some production office somewhere in America, and Bob sits there and says, now, here's why we got to do this, is because on the day when the sun is going down and we're paying generator rentals and everybody's in their makeup and hair and the crew's getting paid, we can't have any arguments or discussions about what the scene is about. So that's it. So Bob gets us all together for quote-unquote rehearsals, but sometimes, up to that point, rehearsals have sometimes been, a set has been taped out on the floor, and it's not a phone, it's a block of wood that you pretend is a phone and stuff like that. But Bob brought us all together, every cast member, and Eric was there as well. So it was us, Sally, Michael T., Robin, anybody who had, I don't know, I guess that was kind of like the main cast,
right.
And Eric, and for 2 weeks, we started at the first page and we talked about every scene. We could talk about each other's characters, lines we liked, lines we didn't like, scenes we were in, scenes we were not in. And we worked our way through to the end of the movie. And then we went back to page 1 and we did it all over again. And that's what we did for 2 weeks. And huge things were actually come up with and changed in the course of that rehearsal, including the entire take of Forrest and Bubba in basic training, in boot camp.
Right.
Because Eric had written it, it was kind of like, we did everything wrong but right. We were like, buck privates. So what are we going to go? They do buck privates, Eric? We're going to run around like Abbott and Costello, me and Bubba? And Bob would say, well, how would you go through that? What would Forrest do? But that was the give and take of everything that went on, and based on those discussions, we would be having the same discussion right up to the day that we would shoot an individual scene, either in South Carolina or back here in L.A.
I would say that the thing that's the thing that's unique about this movie than any other movie I made, and it started in that rehearsal period, because one of the things when I'm in that rehearsal, one of the things I always say is, I just want to make sure we're all making the same movie. Right? I just want to make sure that we're all making the same movie. And in this movie, absolutely everybody who was involved in it, from the cast, to, Eric and all the above-the-line producers, and every single person on this crew, everybody was inspired on this movie. It's like everybody knew exactly what every small prop had to look like, every piece of wardrobe had to look like. It was just one of those miraculous situations where I never had to go to anybody and say, you know, what movie are you making? You know, I mean, this is, you know, so that was very unique about this one.
Was there anything particular that got dramatically changed in post that was deleted or taken out, or something that you felt might kind of change the course of things that you did in post?
No, it was just, no, it was a, you know, it was a very solid screenplay. It wasn't one of those situations where we'll put a scene from the beginning to the end. It was just literally, you know, tightening things up. I mean, we had a scene where Forrest was on the bridge with Martin Luther King that didn't make it into the final movie. We had, we talked about what were some other ones? I can't remember.
I think
talked about them today.
That sequence.
What's that?
It's mostly that sequence because.
Oh, we talked about the one in Vietnam.
Oh yeah, when we had a scene where Jenny actually, it's implied that she kills her father as a little girl. We took that out. So
that wasn't implied.
Yeah,
We had to run over the guy with a tractor.
well, but the way I shot it is, he was in the field, and there was this weed harvester, and he was in the field pulling this rock out of the ground, and she was staring at the gear shift lever. And then the next thing you knew, the thing was moving. So you never actually saw her pushing the lever forward.
She was like one of the children of the dam. You know, the lever goes chunk chunk and then off,
Right.
you know, kills her father. That was the stuff we shot. The stuff that you
Oh, we
dreamed
shot
up
that,
on was
yeah.
like, oh, insane.
Oh, yeah.
How many times were we screaming, Bob, you can't show that in a movie? You know?
So could this film get made today? Do you think the business has changed enough that it would be hard to pitch this film today?
I mean, it's a miracle that the film got made back then, 15 years ago. I mean, it was one of those. I mean, I'll be perfect. I think I'm going to be perfectly honest here. Film school. I mean, the movie got made because Tom wanted to make it and I wanted to make it, and believe me, history, is going to sound very different now, but the executives at the time, they didn't know what this was. I mean, they were going like, oh my God, there's like, they were not, they didn't see this as a viable movie, let alone as, I mean, I'll tell you how much, we didn't even have a crew t-shirt on this movie. Not even, we weren't even given the money in the budget to make a crew t-shirt because.
That's how little faith the studio had.
That's right. That's right. So, the long-winded way of saying, absolutely not, you couldn't make this movie today. I don't think so. I think it would be really, 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 really hard.
Do you agree, you guys? Gary, you think you could make it today?
I couldn't make it today. I mean, Bob might. I don't know. It'd probably cost 3 times as much. That's for sure, right?
Yeah, at least. Yeah, probably.
I think the problem would be is how I'm not sure they could figure out how to market it, which is where they begin. So that would become a problem, I think.
Looking at each of the films you've done, just to leave Forrest Gump for a moment, I mean, I think it's interesting, especially for this audience, what it is that attracts you about the particular technological challenge you take on in each film.
It kind of happens in the reverse. I actually get attracted to a screenplay based on the characters in the story, and then something happens. Something happens where then I have to start figuring out a way to, I don't know, spray that spectacle in there or something. I don't know what that is, and that's basically how it happens.
So, Forrest Gump became obviously much more than a character in a movie. I mean, it's become this iconic kind of figure. But at the time, it seemed like people like Newt Gingrich and Pat Buchanan all said, oh, great conservative hero. Now, I happen to know enough about you guys and your politics to know that this was probably not where you were headed. But how did you feel about what you intended? Was this a surprise to you, the reaction that it was seen as Hollywood going conservative?
I never got it. I mean, I really never understood it. Because we were saying it, I think Bob has sort of universal desire to poke a stick in everybody's eye. That he has a jaundiced point of view, or at least did, about all sorts of things. So that some people, as I was saying, my politics are more left wing, and I don't. Bob felt that they're fair game too. The Black Panthers, and I mean, you've seen the Vietnam March. And,
Well, here's my theory, and it's only a theory. My theory is that
Not at this school, it's only a theory, Bob.
right. No.
At this school, it's
only a theory.
gospel according to Bob Zemeckis.
Yeah, my theory is this. My theory is that the Newt Gingrich people of the country have this incredible noise-making machine. They just love to hate. They hate movies, right? And so they make a lot of noise about how movies are destroying the social fabric of our culture and our youth. So when a movie comes along that they like, they got this noisy machine, right? And that just like creates this thing which isn't really, anything. But I did get summoned to, the movie came out in July, and I got summoned to to meet all the editors of the Wall Street Journal in August, because they wanted to know what was going on here. That was their question. They sat me down, gave me lunch, and said, "What's going on? What's with this movie? Is this a change? What's going on?" I said, "I don't think so, But anyway, who knows?
Well, it actually comes into the Republican philosophy of getting things done. Rather than give money to, say, special education programs for disabled students, it's better just to ask their mothers to sleep with the principal of the school they want them to get into. Which is much more in tune to the American can-do spirit.
Right.
What do you think? My Lieutenant Dan, he's proud of me.
So on that note, Gary, right after Forrest Gump came out, I was here on campus talking to someone in another department, and I said something about your performance, and they were saying how wonderful it was, after which I said, and the effects really worked, and they said, what effects? And so we said, did it ever dawn on you that he has legs? But I would love to have you share a little with us about what it meant to try to do that performance, because it's completely remarkable the way in which you handle your body.
It's funny how people have asked me that before and thought it was so convincing, but they forget that I'm in my underpants when I walk out on, the first time you see them, I'm in boxer shorts, my legs are hanging out there, I'm walking around, I'm on my way to the John. And people forget that part of it because the effects of removing the legs were so convincing that he must be a double amputee. I remember when Bob called me on the phone and said, I know how we're going to do the legs.
Everybody does you.
Everybody does. I know.
Everybody does, Bob.
Yeah.
We're going to take them off in the computer. And I said, great.
Did you work with a physical therapist? Did you work with someone to help you? Because, I mean, what I think is so convincing is the way in which you handle your upper body, when clearly we know you were using your legs, but at the same time, it's an amazing piece of physical performance.
We had a Ricky Jay, the magician. Remember, Bob got Ricky Jay to come over and design this special wheelchair that I could actually sit on my legs and tuck this part of my legs down into this chair, and you would actually look at the chair, and it wouldn't, they've done that before, but I remember Bob said, we don't want your legs down in a box underneath the chair. So he designed this wheelchair. They designed a wheelchair that actually the seat just bent back a little bit like this, and it had this little platform on it right in the middle, and I could tuck my legs right in, and you could look at the chair, and the illusion was that, it was a perfectly legitimate wheelchair and wear with the legs. And then we designed these, the pants, Joanna designed these you know, fatigue
Stumps.
pants that would wrap around. You know, my leg had to be bent like this, so they would wrap these pants around my leg. And I would tuck them in, and I could sit in the chair for maybe 10 minutes, and then I'd have to stand up and shake out a little bit. And then, of course, the computer effects were great, and I just had to try to move around as if I had no legs. And they did a remarkable job putting the shadows in and all the things that they did animated with the animation. It was great.
If we can turn for just one moment, Eric, back to you for the Curious Case of Benjamin Button obviously relies on some very, very sophisticated effects that couldn't have been done when this film was made. And I just wonder, I think it's really a question to all of you, do the ability that we have now with effects to create this kind of magic, do you feel as artists, as performers, as directors, writers, a greater sense of freedom that you're not as limited by the physical production?
As a writer, I never felt I was limited. I mean, it was probably naivete, but if I wrote World War I broke out, World War I would break out if it was deemed to be necessary, you know. And so that I always assumed that there was a Bob Zemeckis around who could figure out how to do it, and probably certain movies haven't gotten made or because they haven't figured out how to do certain things yet.
Anybody else have any thoughts about?
Well, I think you can literally make anything now. Stan Freberg used to talk about the superiority of radio over film, because on radio, you could drain Lake Michigan and fill it with marshmallows for absolutely no cost whatsoever. Now you can drain Lake Michigan and fill it with marshmallows inside a computer, and it's expensive, but nonetheless, you've drained Lake Michigan and you've filled it with marshmallows. Whether or not draining Lake Michigan and filling it with marshmallows is really germane to the story, however, that is the point that still remains to be proven. And just because you can do anything on film now doesn't mean that you should.
I think it's a tremendous burden on you, you newly admitted grad students out there. Here's what I'm noticing. What I'm noticing is that the expectation is that the images that you guys produce are expected now to be absolutely perfect. There's no excuse for it not to be perfect. That's a big burden. Forrest Gump, we made this movie 16 years ago, and those effects of, Forrest with Kennedy, those were jaw droppers back then. They're a shrug now. You see this on every TV commercial. I mean, this is like, old school. It's really interesting. What's going to happen is, I don't think spectacle because it is all perfect and it's as magnificent as anyone can imagine it. It isn't gonna be a reason to see a movie anymore. So what's actually going to happen is it's the power of the story. Unfortunately, there isn't going to be any margin for error when it comes to putting your images up there. I mean, you're all going to be expected to have, paint boxes on, every frame that you generate's going to, you can't have any mic shadows. You can't have any, if an actress's hair is flyaway, got to paint it out. That's going to be the expectation.
In that vein, Gary, just one last question before we open it up to you. You've done work for television, obviously. We all enjoy your performances regularly. You've done a lot of work on stage, and you've obviously done a lot of work for the big screen. Do you have a preference to one medium over the others, or are there particular challenges to one over the other that you might want to share with this audience?
What? The commonality is always just trying to be truthful, no matter if you're on stage or on television or in the movies or wherever. You're just trying to be believable and make the performance right. And the mechanics might be a little bit different on film versus stage or television. Right now I'm playing the same part for 5 years now. I thought that was, I knew that was going to be a challenge to tough it out, playing the same character now for this long, because I was always an actor who was going from thing to thing, but now now I've settled into the role, and there's you know, it's interesting to be able to play somebody over this long period of time and try to change things up and to, you know, mix things up with the writers and evolve the character over a long period of time. I enjoy all the mediums, you know, as long as I'm a working guy. That's what I care about.
Okay. All right, we're going to open this up. I think, as Alex mentioned to you earlier, we have a mic right over here. So if you want to ask a question, if you could come and line up over at the mic, and once...
Are you a junior college transfer, sir, to the...
Okay.
Just out of high school, are you, young man?
I'm 91.
Julian is our oldest alum, I think, that we have here at the
Yeah.
moment. So welcome.
And the
It's
youngest
lovely to have
in many
you.
ways, I hope. If we had just seen what we just saw in the newest 3D form, would we have found anything more in it? Would it have been more rewarding?
I can answer that question. Not all movies should be made in 3D. What's happening out there now is because we have perfected the 3D format, everyone thinks that all movies are going to be 3D. I don't think Forrest Gump should have been made in 3D. I think it should have been made exactly the way it is. I think you have to have a story that lends itself to 3D, and then that will add spectacle to that particular story. But all movies shouldn't be made in 3D, just like all movies shouldn't be made in widescreen. I mean, 3D is like a presentation format.
There's a question for the actors as well as the director. I'm just wondering what in the nature of the relationship between actor and director is most useful, helpful to you to facilitate a performance, to elicit the correct emotional tone? Is it come from the writing? Does it come from your interaction with the director? What's most helpful to you as an actor?
I think one of the things is just being open to listen to what the actor has to say. That's always helpful. Bob was always very open to me. I was constantly bringing in thoughts about the disability of Lieutenant Dan and what would actually happen if you lost your legs in battle and that kind of thing. In fact, one time I called Bob up and Eric, and there was originally a scene where Lieutenant Dan came right out of the hospital and went to a bar or something, and pretty soon after he had lost his legs, and I called Bob and suggested that scene be actually cut and rework, you know, maybe some of the stuff be taken and put in another scene. Bob was always very open to that, open to hearing, because the actor's out there trying to figure out what he's going to do, trying to research the part, trying to, you know, and if the director's open, that's always very, very helpful. Sometimes they're not, you know, and that can be a problem. But Bob is not like that. He was very, very open to what we had to bring to it, and so was Eric. And one of the things I just want to comment on the moment that Tom was talking about when we were sitting, actually going through the script page by page by page. And one of the things, I don't know if you remember that, but at one point Bob goes, we get to this 1 second, and he goes, "Now wait a minute, what's the deal with this shrimp?" And if you remember that, we didn't quite know why Forrest gets sort of driven to go down and work on a shrimp boat. The stuff about Bubba was not actually in there where all Bubba talked about was shrimp. It wasn't in the, and so in those meetings, they came up with the idea to have Bubba have nothing else on his mind besides shrimp. And because Bubba had nothing else on his mind besides shrimp, that's all that Forrest Gump remembered was shrimp. And so he's driven to go fulfill that dream of Bubba's, and that came out of a meeting where it was spitballing and a lot of ideas were coming out, and it ended up being, you know, a pretty significant part of the storyline. Bob was very, very open, looking for a lot of ideas, and that's always terrific to work with a director like that.
Tom, how about?
Well, Bob, he's the director who comes by and says, so what do you think? What do you think you do here? As opposed to, okay, remember, you're looking up and you're scared. You feel you feel terror in your heart. It's about, you know, he doesn't do anything like that. And you see him, it's Kong. And you know, you want to scream, but you can't scream. You know, he doesn't do anything like that. He says, what do what do you think? And then you'll do something. You'll come and say, why'd you do that? There was 3 o'clock in the morning. Jenny tells Forrest that she won't marry him, and Forrest goes out onto the porch through the screen door and slams, and he did it. He does it. He goes out and he stands like this, and Bob says, "Why do you put your hands on your hips like that?" I mean, it looks kind of goofy. Pretty serious scene, you know. And it's kind of like a silly pose. And I said, well, I saw Michael doing it on the set. And he was an 8-year-old kid standing around like this. And I just said, I thought that, you know, when Forrest has something on his mind, he just puts his hands in that very effeminate way on his hips and stands there. All right. So, you know, he's willing to let us do our job and not run onto this and say, no, no, no. Forrest can't stand like that. He must stand like this. He didn't do anything like that. So there you go.
I know you want to say something, Bob.
Well, it's all like a great. It's all when it's running on all cylinders. It's like a magnificent. It's a process. It's a stew. You know, everybody's working together. When these actors are going to the place where they go to do all this great emotional stuff that they do, I don't want to know where they go. It's none of my business. I don't want to go near it. You know, that's their process. That's what they do. It's my job just to sort of have my hand on the throttle, you know. I just sort of like think my job is to guide the actor as to where they are emotionally in the movie as a whole. You know, it's like at this point in time, this is what you're feeling at this point in time. But I do find, though, that when I say it's all a process and it all fits together, every time an actor ever comes up to me and says, why would I say this, right? It's always a problem with the script. I mean, always. You got a problem with the scene. Because, I mean, if you can't answer immediately and say, here's the reason. If an actor says, I don't understand why my character would say or do this, and you don't know immediately why, like the example that Tom just sort of, then you got to go and you got to look into the script. You got to say, what's wrong with this? How come you're confused?
Every movie I've done, the actors, if they come to me and say, why am I doing this? I have to go back and look at because there's something wrong with it. For them to have kind of the courage to come out of that trailer, to have to go play that emotion, whatever that part is, 100%.
And do you make sure, Bob, when you haven't written the script, that you bring the writer into all your rehearsals and make them available?
The writers are on 24-hour call, like an old-fashioned family doctor.
Okay, next question.
Hello, everyone. My question is about the music in the movie, because I equate a lot of the times that I hear the songs now with the movie. And I wonder if you went through the process of thinking about what songs to put into the movie or how that went about, because they really do resonate and it really makes sense.
The music is actually a very interesting character in the movie, and and we broke it down, and I actually have a really succinct answer to that question. First of all, we were deciding that we were going to have all these rock and pop tracks in the movie. We had to make a decision because there were so many. We said, well, let's start with American music because it's an American story. So there's no British invasion or British artists in the movie at all. So we limited ourselves to only American music. And the long conversations I had with Al Silvestri was how are we gonna blend the the record tracks with the score, and it really shaped up very easy. The thing I kept saying to Alan is that the pop tracks, it should be as if there's a radio on in the room, the soundtrack that was going on in the life of these people. So all the music is accurate for the era or for the year that you're in. And basically we divided it up like this, that the records were going to play the landscape and the underscore was going to play the emotion. And that's sort of where we started, and that's what we did.
What does the phrase "stupid is as stupid does" mean, and how did it evolve?
My mother used to say, handsome is as handsome does, which is an old expression, meaning if you do something sort of well and elegantly, that will be remembered that way, and I just perverted it. I mean, if you want, like, the box of chocolates, I said that, I had the line, and Bob said, because it's just life is Bob said, what the hell does that mean? And I said, you never know what you're going to get, and that's the line you have. But why these things resonate with people, I can't tell you. I think they're just because they seem common, and then they're somehow in the character's mind mean something to him. Stupid is as stupid does, I guess. I don't know. I think anybody recognizes doing something stupid. I don't know. I can't answer. I mean, it's just. What do you think it means, Tom? Anything?
I don't know, but Mama said, anytime people call you stupid, you just say back to them, well, stupid is as stupid does. All right, Mama. You're stupid. Well, stupid is, stupid does. That's what my mama said. He doesn't know what it means, but he knows he's supposed to say it, because Forrest always did what Mama said.
And so my question is, what do you do to make sure that your movies are so, so technically, and the special effects are they stand up so well to time?
Boy, just work really hard, I mean, there's no, I mean, it's, my agent used to joke that I was the best per hour rate for the studios in Hollywood. He'd say, you're the best per hour rate for the studio for Hollywood. So all you can do is work hard. That's all you can do. And that's, it just takes a lot of back-breaking work. That's all it is.
All right, I'm going to tell a story that we just told at dinner time. All right, you just saw the movie. When Forrest is playing ping pong, and the soldier comes in and says, are you Forrest Gump? And I say, yes, sir. He says, you've just been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Okay, it was the last shot for the night. And there was a ping pong table, and everybody was there. And Bob said, well, how are we going to do this? I said, well, Bob, how about if I'm here playing ping pong? And then the guy comes in and says, you've just won the Congressional Medal of Honor. And Bob looked at me like I was from Mars, saying, well, hell, anybody can do that. You got to do something. And he's just sat there. And then he leaped up. I got it! He said, what we're going to do is we're going to put the ping pong table up on its side, so Forrest is going to be playing by himself. We're going to put a little square in tape, and Forrest is just going to be hitting this ping pong ball back and forth, back and forth, back and forth into that same square tape. Is going to hit there every time. And I said, well, Bob, I can't hit the ping pong ball. Oh, no, we're going to do it with CGI. All right, let's shoot it. And then we shot it in 6 minutes, and then we were done. But we had to go through Bob going. Because if we'd just done it the normal way, well, hell, anybody can do that. So he always tries to make movies that nobody else can do. And he pretty much succeeds, I'd say, Bob.
Good evening. My name is Jorge, and I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I have a quick question. This is open to any of you. What life lessons did you guys take away from the character of Forrest Gump that you guys have applied to your life, if any?
I really like Forrest's philosophy at the end of the movie when he's talking to Jenny's grave. And we went around and around on that a really long time because it wasn't the two-parter for a long time, and it was all about this feather blowing around on the breeze. I kept going to Erica, going, is life only just random? is it just only random, or is there, you know? And so, so right at the 11th hour, we all cooked it up, and we,
Right.
you know, and we, and you know, and so we were just able to, you know, because I just felt like you can't, no one, not even Forrest, could have the, you know, the knowing, you know, of what.
If you can hear, I think, I don't remember the line exactly, but you can hear it in the dialogues. We weren't sure. I don't know, Jenny, if it's, you know, one way or another way, and that's how we felt, you know.
Right.
That's true.
That was at the 11th hour. We were literally having conversations in the second half of the day in my trailer, trying to figure out the actual cadence of the speech. And earlier the day, I had been in Vietnam with Lieutenant Dan. Fire in the hole, Gump. That was the last scene. Gump, see what's down inside that hole. That was the scene we shot right before. We moved locations, changed clothes, got out of the makeup, and went to the big tree and shot the scene at Jenny's.
And I
Jenny's
remember,
grave.
I remember writing it out, and it was way too long.
Oh, geez.
It was like forever, because I couldn't really articulate it as well as I would have liked to, you know, and maybe if I had more time, but, and then somehow they made it work.
Thank you very much.
Alex, are we running out of time here? Okay, one final question.
One final question with a 45-minute answer. We're not doing anything. We're not doing.
A lot of pressure. But anyway, I was just wondering for Bob and Gary and Tom, just could you talk a little bit about your process when something on set, when you're shooting, when a moment's not quite working? How do you work through that? Because, you know, just as an aspiring director, that happens a lot.
Can I answer for Tom?
Sure.
He just laughs his ass off.
What about for us who don't have actors like Tom?
What's that? I'm sorry?
Never mind.
Oh.
Yeah, there wasn't an actor who had the same kind of confidence.
Look, you know, everybody asks me, they say, oh man, you must have had such a good time making that movie, you know? And, you know, it was, you know, doing the work and working with these actors was really great, but it was a hard movie. It was really hard. And to me, it felt like something was going wrong every single minute. And, you know, making a movie is, for me, it's just survival, you know? Just get through the day with enough stuff that you can cut together. That's how it always feels, but that's just me. What about you guys?
It sort of like never really stops. When it's almost like filmmaking by attrition, because the only time you stop is when you run out of something. You run out of daylight, or you run out of film, or you run out of time, money. There are some days on this that were just a collection of the most breezy shots you can imagine. You know, okay, Tom, you're gonna go up and you're gonna go to the mailbox and you're gonna pull out a letter and you just gotta hold it up so we can get the camera over your arm. We see that it's an envelope from Apple Computer. All right, okay, all right. And you just do that, you bang that out and you go grab some other stuff. But then there were days in which everybody has lost their equilibrium, and we don't know if it's working right or not. We don't know what the punctuation mark is on the scene. And you end up sort of trusting a process that goes back to the very first moment that we started talking about it, you know, and every conversation ended up being important. Everything that you agreed upon, everything, more importantly, is what you eliminated, goes into shaping that day when you get there. I mean, you talk about the emotional power of certain scenes, and I'll tell you, like, when Forrest shows up at Jenny's apartment and meets his son for the first day, you know, that was a little bit of everything. It was kind of goofy, it was kind of silly. It was a couple of very emotional moments, but other than that, it's like camera moves and marks, and did we get it or not? I don't know.
And the crappiest little set that we built in a warehouse that was rain cover, right? Because, you know, it was literally in a...
The whole thing was fake.
The whole thing was like just, I mean, it was like, you know, it's a great scene.
Part of it is absolute, we know that it's the emotional core of the movie, and we sure hope that we're hitting the emotional core of the movie. But at the same time, we were able to ad-lib a line, because he says, what would Forrest think about when he first walks in here, Tom? I think he'd say, hey, you have air conditioning. And that wasn't, that wasn't in the thing. But first of all, it was so hot in South Carolina that day, but that was something. But that's what Forrest would say, because he, you know, that's a big deal to Forrest. Ooh, you live in a house with air conditioning. So you end up, I've heard this thing explained that is the state of all actors, in some ways filmmakers, and I think with Bob, it is at its most precise, is that actors have to be in this constant position of equipoise. The definition of equipoise is that state in which you are in a perfect balance between relaxation and concentration. It's equal to a center fielder at the crack of the bat. He has to be relaxed enough to know which direction to turn for the fly ball, but he also has to concentrate enough to be able to read a myriad of signals in a fraction of a second in order to be there. And this is what Bob, I think, demands of us, whether we're running through a jungle or we're in a fake snowstorm in downtown Los Angeles. You have to be in this position where you can go any direction emotionally that the scene and the moment and the beat ends up taking you.
And be able to, Tom, can you do all that, but then open yourself up to camera a little more?
Yeah.
Can you just twist your body a little bit more like this? Because that's what it ultimately always comes down to. And what's great about these really great, and when you have actors that go, yeah, I can make anything work, Bob. Don't worry about it.
You mean like this?
I can make it. You mean and it's great, rather than them throwing up their hands and storming in their trailer because how do you expect me to to turn my body this way when I'm running through the jungle like this,
Here's a great truth about acting in movies. Who out there is primarily an actor? Anybody? Okay. Oh, 2. Great. 4. Okay. Fabulous. Good odds. More actors than directors in the film. This is the only time it'll happen to you in show business. Directors and writers will outnumber you. Oh, geez, I forgot what I was going to say now. Is that this is what it is, and you learn this on a Bob Zemeckis movie much sooner than you do anywhere else, is that it feels incredibly fake when you're shooting it, but it looks absolutely real on screen. So no matter what position you're in, what contortion you have to make, how fake you have to hold up, the piece of paper so somebody can read it, it always looks artificial. It feels artificial when you're doing it, but it is the real thing when you see it on film. And that's what separates the pros from the amateurs, is they can't understand that difference. And Gary and me, we're pros.
That's right. And whenever there was a problem, whenever I had to figure out a shot or I was struggling with a shot, Tom would say, Bob, I got the shot for you. Pow.
Pow, right here.
Right here, buddy.
Bring it in right here, baby. Right here.
There's the shot.
When in doubt, bang, right in here. And I have a one-word answer to all your editing problems. Intermission.
Well, I think it's a little after 10. We promised these folks that we would have them out of here by 10. I think this has been, you'll agree with me, a remarkable evening. And clearly a remarkable film that all of us, I think, sat down 15 years after we saw it the first time. Some folks here are probably too young to have seen it 15 years ago, but those of us that weren't.
Think about that.
Jeez, how old were you?
Is there anyone here who never saw this movie on the big screen before tonight?
Wow.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Look at that.
That's unbelievable.
What were we, like your babysitter, Mom and Dad are going out. You can watch Forrest Gump again. Angela will order pizza. But you need to go to bed when she tells you to.
So clearly the sign of a truly great movie, I think, is one that's still with us this long and provokes this kind of discussion. And we are enormously grateful to all of you for the incredible pleasure that this movie has given to so many, many people. And thank you very much for being with us.
Fight on!